All right, let's keep working on the obstacle course here. All I've done here is just added more platforms. What am I doing there? I forgot. Geez, I forget how to navigate around the interface. I just do this stuff without thinking. So what I've done here is, oh, it's ASWD. That's right, ASWD to move around, and Q and E will move you up and down. And that's you have to be holding the right mouse button. So I'm holding the right mouse button down, and now I can zoom around. All I've done here is add a whole lot more platforms, and I've got my respawn boxes working so that I can't fall off the world. And that's kind of it. Now, all I'm going to try to do is get up to this platform here. And one thing you could do if you wanted to be sneaky or devious or whatever is, you could provide the player multiple paths up to one of these platforms that the player's trying to get to. However, you could go in here and you could just disable the box collider on one of these things so the player tries to jump on it and they fall right through. And then they've got to figure out, well, what's the correct way to get there? So what we're going to try to do here is make an end zone that the player has to reach, like somewhere up here. And when the player gets there, they'll see a message. So let's, to do that, let's just put a box up there, and we'll call it the end zone. So I'm just going to right click on that platform. So what you're going to want to do is just take some time and kind of build out your obstacle course. And then once your obstacle course is built out, then you want to come back and pause this video, then come back, and now you can get now you can finish it up. Or you could make the end zone now, and then have the start, have the end zone, and then just fill in a path of platforms in the middle. So it's kind of up to you how you do it. So what I'm going to do here is on this last platform, I'm going to right click and I'm going to make a cube. And it's going to put that cube, it should put that cube on the platform. And let me call it end zone here. And I kind of was hoping the thing would be there. Oh, there it is. So it got the scaling of its parent, which is kind of annoying. So maybe what I'll do is I'll drag it off of the player here, or sorry, off of that last platform, and you can see its scale got all out of whack over here in the position, rotation, scale. I'm going to set its scale back to 111, and oops, I goofed that all up. Sorry. I want to mess with the end zone. I want to set its scale to 111. There we go. Okay, and then let's maybe position it down here at the end. And now actually let's rescale it. So the player's it's big enough for the player to enter, and then let's click on the little arrow, let's kind of push it, so it's kind of right there at the end of the obstacle course. There we go. And then let's do our trick here. Let's turn off the mesh renderer so we don't see it. And let's check the box to make it a trigger. So otherwise the player's going to smack right into this thing. So let's put a script on this object that's going to listen for the player entering that trigger box. So in my scripts folder here, not all scripts, sorry, in the scripts folder I created, scripts, I'm just going to right click, I'm going to make a new script, a new C# script, and I'll call it end zone. And now I'll drag it onto the end zone here. I'll just drag it right onto the end zone. Oh, why isn't it letting me do that? Drag it onto the end zone. There we go. So you can see that the end zone script is now on that object. I wonder why it's called script 1. Anyway, okay. Let's double click on the end zone script to open it up in Visual Studio. And we're not going to need the update function, so we can just delete that. And what else are we going to need here? Let's add our onTriggerEnter function. onTriggerEnter, and I'm just going to hit tab and it'll autocomplete. So same deal. We'll just check we'll check the tag on this thing to see if it's the player. So if the other thing's tag is equal to the word player, then the player must have reached the end zone. So let's log a message to the console. Debug.log player reached end zone, semicolon. All right, so now when the player enters the zone, it'll log out this little message on the console. So what do we want to do when the player reaches the end zone? Let's like pop up an image on the screen that just says you won, and then maybe wind up a timer to put the player back where the player started. So how are we going to know where the player started? Well, let's add a transform object. A transform is just a position. No, you know what? No. We're going to add a vector 3. A vector 3 is just an XYZ, or it's either a direction in 3D space or it's a point in 3D space. A vector 3 is just a group of 3 values, an X and a Y and a Z. And let's just call it start position. And when the script starts, when the game starts up and the script gets loaded, it's going to call its start function. So what we'll do is we'll find the player, and then we'll store the player's position in the start position object that we just created. So let's make a game object here, and we'll call it player equals game object dot find with tag player. So that'll find us the player, and then let's save the player's position into the vector 3 we created. So we'll say start position equals player dot transform dot position. So go into the player and get out that position. If this doesn't work, we might have to go into the player's character controller and pull the position out of that. I'm not super sure that's going to work, but we'll try it and see if it works. So again, what this is doing is when the script starts up, it goes and finds the player, and it takes the player's position and it stores it in this variable we created. Why do we do that? So later we'll be able to put the player back at the start. So how are we going to do that? Well, how about when the player enters the box, we'll start like a 3-second timer or something. And when it elapses, we'll put the player back at the start. And so when the timer goes off, we need a function to call. So let's make a function called, restart. And in the restart function, what we'll do is we'll put the player back at wherever the player started. So the restart function, let's put the player back at the start. So we'll do that trick that we did before. Actually, we could probably take that right out of our respawn box script. Let me just grab all that. Just grab that stuff out of the onTriggerRender function in the respawn box, and let's go to the end zone here and paste it in. So we'll get the character controller off of the player. We'll disable it. And now instead of the respawn point here, let's put it at the, what do we call it up here? Oh, we called it start position. So let's go down here and we'll call it start position. Does that work? Yeah. And so why don't we have player here? The name player does not exist. Oh, did we save the player? No, we never looked up the player. So we can just copy that line in. So find the player, get the player's component, move the player, then put the player back at the start position. So that's part of it. Now the trick is that we're missing the glue that says when the player enters the box, call this function to move the player. But we need like a delay. We don't want it to like boom, the player gets there and now they're teleported back to the start. So how can we do that? Well, in this statement where the player gets to the end zone, we can there's a function called invoke. And what invoke does, if you look at the description here, the tooltip, it says that you give it the method name and the delay. You say, okay, I want you to call this function in this number of seconds. So let's invoke the restart function, in 3 seconds or something like that, or 5 seconds. So let's invoke the restart function in 3 seconds. Sure. 5 seconds. I don't know. So when the player enters the box, or when something enters the box, we check to see if it's tagged as player. If it is, we print out this message and invoke the restart function in 5 seconds. So in 5 seconds, this function will get called. And then what we do is we look up the player by the tag. We get the character controller off of the player object. We disable it, move the player back to the start, then re-enable it. Okay, so we're not quite done with this script, but we're getting close. So let's save this, and then let's just go test it. So the easiest way to test this out, rather than try to run the whole obstacle course, is just take the player and make it a child of the end zone here, and then set its position to 0, 0, 0, and now the player is actually in the end zone. The player is 0, 0, 0 away from the end zone. And then let me just move the FPS controller out of the end zone. And let's just test it out, and then we'll take the player off of the end zone. Also, we've got this weird problem here that now that the FPS is a child of the end zone. So let's there we go. So now the player is kind of a top level object. Let's run this and just see if it works. All right, so I think if I walk down here, let me click on the console so we can see what's going on. And if I walk, player reached the end zone, and oh, it worked. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now we're in the end zone. Player reached the end zone. 3, 2, 1, and boom. Now we're back where we started. Oh my gosh, it worked. That never happens. Okay, so now, you know what? I'm going to stop the recording there. That worked out pretty well. What we'll do in the next video is we're going to keep working on this end zone script, and what we'll do is we're going to add an image here, and we're going to turn on the image when the player gets into the box, and then when we restart, we'll turn off the image. So there you go. I'll kind of leave that there freeze framed. And again, if you have any trouble getting this to work, just send me a screenshot or send me an email, and we'll get it working.